19 through 24, page 227. You have not come to something that can be touched, a blazing fire, and darkness, and gloom, and a tempest, and the sound of a trumpet, and a voice whose words made the hearers beg that not another word be spoken to them. For they could not endure the order that was given. If even an animal touches the mountain, it shall be stoned to death. Indeed, so terrifying was the sight that Moses said, I tremble with fear. But you have come to Mount Zion, and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to innumerable angels in festal gathering, and to the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. Word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. What would be a pretty standard or common question to think about this morning? The question is, sitting here today, are you afraid of anything? Are you afraid of anything today? I guess that's kind of a dumb question if you think about it. Because while we may not have a particular fear at this moment, we always have fear, don't we? Always. And learning to live with fear is simply a part of being a human being. Obviously, fears can be good. We're supposed to fear. Fear keeps us from going into places that we should not go and doing things we should not do. Even as it prompts us to do things we need to do in order to protect ourselves. That's healthy fear. But for every healthy fear, there are many unhealthy fears. Fears that drive us into actions and attitudes that can be destructive not only to ourselves, but to others. If you look at our time, this age we live in, as compared to previous eras, we have so much less to fear than previous generations, even the generation of our parents. If we study what life was like 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 100 years ago, 500 or more years ago, it becomes very easy to understand why our ancestors could be overwhelmed simply by the terrors of everyday living. Giving birth in those days was just plain dangerous. Dangerous. Yet, here we are in our age, our wonderful technology, and our ability to communicate, and yet we still fear, don't we? And some of those fears are overwhelming with all of what we count, those things that we shouldn't fear. Yet we do. And that should not come as a surprise, because there are so many out there in the world, in our culture, in our communities, trying to make us afraid. And they do a good job. Fear is big business. And those who market fear use psychology and human behavior in order to manipulate our emotions and manipulate our buying habits. We're coming into the season of Christmas buying presents. And I promise you, before this season ends, you will see an advertisement that will tell you the best way to show love to your loved ones is to give them stuff. Give them stuff. And if you don't give them enough stuff, they're not going to love you. That will be the message. Subtle and outright. What's that? Yeah, exactly. That's the way we operate. Think about this. We have healthy fears in this community, right? In this nation. But what is in the fear of not being able to get a Popeye's chicken sandwich? Explain that to me. Explain that. Has anybody eaten one? Raise your hand if you have. Is it good?
It's ordinary.
It's ordinary. There you go. Planet propaganda. That's where we are. Planet propaganda. And of course we know, historically and today, the fear of the gods, or God, is one of the biggest segments of the fear industry. And this should not surprise us, because God has always embodied the greatest fear of every heart. From the beginning of human history to today, it's the fear of the unknown. It's also the fear of the unknowable. The unknowable. If you study the religion of the ancients, you learn that the gods were never depicted or worshipped as friendly or loving or loving. Most of the gods were not only hostile toward the world, but they demanded blood, human blood, in order to be satisfied. When calamity struck an individual or the family or the community, it was undoubtedly at the hands of an angry God. And you would have to figure out which God is mad at me and what did I do? That was really how they lived their religion out. These gods would punish humanity for any reason or just at their whim. Even the God of Israel, the God of the chosen people, was one who showed displeasure through human suffering. Now they showed displeasure. And then came Jesus of Nazareth. Talk about a game changer for both the concept of God and the fear business. This sea change, this radical shift in understanding our Creator through the teachings and the life of Jesus are explicitly described in the book of Hebrews. The writer of Hebrews, who has lived long enough to see the advent of Christianity, and also to remember how the gods and how God was understood before Jesus came, and can remember how Jesus radically changed our relationship with God, describes the difference. Here's what the writer says. You have not come into something that can be touched, a blazing fire and darkness and gloom and a tempest and the sound of a trumpet and a voice whose words made the hearers beg that not another word be spoken to them. Now those very specific descriptions come from Old Testament Jewish apocalyptic. And in Jewish apocalyptic, there is no repentance. When God comes to judge, it just happens. And whatever happens to you or to anyone in the world, nothing can be done about it. It was capricious. God's judgment was capricious, and God's judgments were divine. The writer of Hebrews, probably Paul, remembers the God of Moses, who was represented among God's people through these powerful images of judgment. Fire, darkness, storm, and an unearthly voice, which created terror and demanded absolute obedience. Paul contrasts the God of Moses and a religion of fear to the new reality that was affirmed in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It is a spiritual reality. But you, talking to believers, have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel, Cain and Abel. That's where that image comes from. Hebrews does not turn away from the righteousness of God, declaring that God is still the judge of all creation. But with God is God's Son, the Messiah, Jesus Christ, who is the mediator of a new covenant. It is still a covenant of sacrifice. That's why Paul mentions the word blood. But it is a sacrifice of love. It's not our sacrifice. It's God's sacrifice. It's Christ's sacrifice on our behalf, given to us in order to love us, given for us by Christ, rather than the blood of fear, the blood of human or animal sacrifice. What Jesus did was what no other has done or no other could do. Jesus made God knowable. And what we know of God through Christ is an absolute and eternal repudiation of the fear industry. Think of the images that Jesus used in describing the spiritual nature of God through the example of Jesus' own life. The Good Shepherd. The first image we have of Jesus. First one, the oldest one we found, is the shepherd. The bread of life. The gate, the vine. Then think of the nature of the stories that Jesus told to illustrate God's nature and God's relationship with the world. The prodigal son, the father with arms open, welcoming his child home. The Good Samaritan. Stories like that. Where the God of Moses was manifested through darkness, Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Where the God of the Old Covenant, the first covenant, was represented by storm, Jesus stilled the storm and took away the fear of it. Where Yahweh spoke in a voice whose words make the hearers beg that not another word be spoken to them, Jesus spoke these words. Come to me, all you that are weary, you're carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon me and learn of me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. We still use 3 words in regards to death. When we talk about someone who's died, we say, rest in peace, right? Right? There was no resting in peace until Jesus came. That idea simply did not exist. But now it's a part of our very fabric. That's what Christ gave to us. The God of the writer of Hebrews, the God whom we as disciples of Christ worship, is one who invites our faith rather than demands our fear. And for us to view God in any other way, according to Paul, is idolatry. It's idol worship. We can't think of God any other way. Christ took humanity's vision of God from fear to faith. And if we embrace this vision, Our only fear today is that the world does not know this God of infinite and mysterious love as we do. And how sad that is. Jesus showed us, you and I, a God of light. Why? So that we could shine. Jesus showed us a God of bread and wine. Why? So that we would feed the hungry and the thirsty of body, mind, and spirit. Jesus showed us a God who stilled the storms. Why? So that we could become peacemakers and still the storms in the lives of others. Jesus showed us a God who said, "Come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens," so that we could go to the weary of this world and lift from them the burden of suffering and fear. So are we willing to take this journey from fear to faith? Not just for ourselves, but for every heart around us. This message to our hearts is our message to the world. We have nothing to fear this day, or any day of life that God gives to us. We have nothing to fear because we know who God is. We have seen God's face. We have heard God's words. We have watched God's action in the love of the Messiah. And we know God loves us. Unfortunately, there are many around us, maybe some even close to us, who do not know this. And they won't know it until they see that love in us. Until we show them the love of Christ. Till then, all they will have is fear, and what we need to show them is that there is nothing to fear. Because God loves us. We can love God and have faith and trust in His Word. We have nothing